topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to Powerful Business Strategies, where you will find out that everything you have ever learned about growing your business is wrong. Finally, a show where you'll learn the right way to grow your business by learning business and financial strategies that your competition isn't doing. And now, here is your host, President of Next Step CFO, Michael Barbarita. And joining Michael for today's show as an executive moderator is Chucky Obia.
Yes, Michael, this is Chucky. How are you?
Fantastic, Chucky. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Look, Michael, I believe that gratitude is undefeated and growth is about the next step. So it is an honor for me to moderate today's show. So look, let's jump right into it, Michael. Let's reflect.
Okay.
Any high-level takeaways from our last episode?
No, I think it was a great show, and I think people should go back and listen to the replay because it was really terrific. So
absolutely.
But I want to thank you, Chucky. My name is Michael Barbarita, president of Next Step CFO, and Next Step CFO is a fractional CFO and strategic implementation firm, and our vision is to ensure that overwhelmed business owners achieve the time freedom and consistent profits to build a legacy and live the life they desire.
Yes.
Our mission is simple. It's dedicated to guiding small business owners to leveraging their time, exploiting their profits, and build a meaningful legacy. And this show, Powerful Business Strategies, and our book of the same name, is a step toward accomplishing that vision and mission. So with that, I'd like to hand it back to my co-author and moderator for the show, Chucky Obia.
Michael, it's interesting. Each time I hear you sort of outline that mission and vision for Next Step CFO, again, a business that you've built through the years, I'm just additionally inspired, right? So look, before we jump in, folks, a quick disclaimer. Michael and I are both affiliated with a number of different organizations, and I currently serve as the managing director of business development for Vedder Price, a global business-focused law firm. In addition to that, I collaborate strategically with Michael, really coast to coast, on a business roundtable where we moderate these roundtables. We learn best practices from business owners and leaders. In addition to that, we document these business best practices in our book, as Michael referenced, Powerful Business Strategies. Now, the views that we'll express today, these are our personal views, but they are views based on the success of our experiences. And my mission today, just as a fearless moderator, Michael, is to ask the right questions and to help all of us candidly learn the best business strategies that the competition isn't doing. So, Michael, I'll hand it back over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Chucky. So today our show is about 5 areas that need to be looked at when you have a cash flow problem and how to solve them. You know, a couple of months ago, I did a survey of 280 business owners, and that survey said that, and 70% of them said their number one challenge was cash flow. So today, I'd like to discuss these areas that need to be looked at, these 5 areas that need to be looked at when you have a cash flow problem. And so let me review those 5 areas. It's too much inventory, working with slow paying clients or customers, selling prices are too low, gross profit margins are too low, and paying bills too early. And if we have some time at the end of the show, we'll have some bonus content where we'll look at some additional areas that can be looked at if you have a cash flow problem. Now, I had a client who called me a couple of years ago because he had a cash flow problem. And when you have a cash flow problem, the first thing you have to do is identify where that cash flow problem is coming from. And so when I looked at his financial statements and then I prepared a business and cash flow forecast for him, it was evident that they were overbuying inventory. And in my business and cash flow forecast, I have this little tool called an inventory receipts and accounts payable schedule by month. And with that schedule, he knew exactly how much inventory he would bring in without overbuying, while knowing when he has to pay his inventory bills.
That's remarkable.
Yeah, and by following that forecast, he was able to increase his cash flow by $100,000 on the same level of sales. So he didn't increase sales, but still increased cash flow $100,000 because he was able to manage his inventory more efficiently and more effectively. And so inventory can kill you. And let me talk about that first area that needs to be looked at when you have a cash flow problem, and that is too much inventory.
Great. So, Michael, on that too much inventory point, let's absolutely double click and contextualize that. Now, we do have just a couple of really quick questions.
Oh, okay.
Folks, as all of you know, there are a number of business owners that tune in really coast to coast. So, Michael, first on your survey, you mentioned 280 business owners. Was that cross industry?
Yes, it was. It was industries from trades to the medical business, medical industry. It was retail. It was manufacturing. It was service companies. So it was definitely a cross section of industries.
That is very helpful. So the insights that you'll present are cross industry, not just based on one specific industry, correct, Michael?
Right.
Great. All right. Thank you for that clarification.
No problem. So in the case of too much inventory, it really covers the industries of retail, manufacturing, and distributors. But
correct.
But even electricians or tradespeople, they carry inventory and they're going to watch it. So too much inventory is definitely something that has to be looked at first thing. And a great ski retailer in Massachusetts, his name was Roger Butchica, once said that the less inventory you buy, the more money you make. And what Roger meant is that too much inventory can put you out of business really quick. And as a matter of fact, the biggest mistake retailers make is overbuying. And overbuying can surely cause cash flow problems, and too much inventory poses a significant risk to the business owner in poor cash flow and lower gross profit margins. Now, too much inventory results in lower gross profit margins because when you don't have the money to pay the inventory bill, you start discounting to generate cash. And that really squeezes the margin. So too much inventory, by the way, as I said a little earlier, not only kills retailers, but it kills distributors who overbuy and manufacturers who overproduce. And there are plenty of tools available that one can use to forecast inventory requirements more efficiently. One I already mentioned was my business and cash flow forecast that includes an inventory and accounts payable plan by month. Just by utilizing that tool, you're able to manage cash flow better, like the client I talked about earlier. Mm-hmm. But also, today's operating systems have inventory forecasting tools that allow you the opportunity to see where those overages are. And every area that you have an inventory overage poses a risk. And I'm of the opinion that the best solution to an inventory overage problem is to price to move that inventory as soon as possible. It just makes no sense to sit on it when you could turn it into cash, no matter how small the amount of money you get for it, and reinvest in fresher, faster moving inventory with the money that you collect from it. And I got to tell you, Chucky, this flies in the face of what business owners think. And I'm going to give you an example. So I had a client in the hairbrush distribution business.
Okay.
And because of a promotion that didn't meet sales expectations by a lot, the company ended up sitting on a 7-year supply of the special hairbrush inventory. So, he had like 60 grand worth of inventory at cost, and he was only selling about 7 grand of it a year, something to that nature. So he was sitting on 7 years of inventory. Now, first of all, let me say that promotions that don't meet sales expectations, they're common, and no one should be kicking themselves for taking a shot on a promotion, even though it didn't work. However, when a promotion doesn't work and it results in an inventory overage, one should work to address it immediately. Now, this particular client got an offer of $15,000 for the special hairbrush inventory that had a cost to him, that cost him $60,000. Now, at regular prices, he could sell that inventory for $100,000.
Okay.
But no one was buying it.
Ah.
And quite frankly, it was a dog. It was a dog. And so my suggestion was to take the $15,000, reinvest it in fresh, fast-moving inventory. And to give you an example, the fast-moving inventory was turning 8 times a year at a 40% margin. Now, my client thought that if he could sell just 15% of that hairbrush inventory, that special hairbrush inventory, at regular prices, he could make $15,000 in cash flow that he was being offered today and still have the rest of the inventory to sell. And this was true. But it would take him over a year to do it, just to get that 15 grand.
Wow.
Where I was suggesting, because it was just so slow moving, and I called it a dog. It's actually a dog with fleas.
There you go, right?
So by taking the $15,000 today and reinvesting it into that fresh, fast-moving hairbrush inventory that he would go out and purchase with that $15,000, that would turn 8 times a year, and he would generate an additional $200,000 in cash flow that year instead of sitting on this inventory and waiting for $15,000.
Wow, Michael, look, you've struck a nerve with the audience here. So the questions are streaming in. One thing, just quick question. How would a business owner differentiate a slow-moving inventory line from a faster-moving inventory line?
Well, one way is called an inventory turns calculation, but there's several business owners that understand when something isn't selling. They just know it's still sitting there. Now, if they're not paying attention, and sometimes they don't, and all of a sudden they look at their inventory and this product that they thought was going to fly out the door didn't. And so that's when it has to trigger a reaction. And so as you can see from the example that I gave, because of the inventory turnover of the more productive inventory, it pays to cut your losses and get rid of the slower moving inventory at virtually any cost. And Shuki, this is very contrary to what most business owners think. And I understand why.
Yeah.
But I've seen it work time and time again. It's hard to admit when you have a dog, no matter how many fleas the dog has. We business owners still think we can sell it, and that is dangerous thinking. So the critical component here is to sell that inventory, that dog inventory, at all costs, and just move it, price it to sell, whatever it is, and then reinvest the proceeds from whatever flea market rate that you got.
Exactly.
And put it back into that productive inventory that's going to turn for you, that's going to sell for you, and that's going to generate more cash for you.
I love it. I mean, Michael, you're in the zone here, man. A lot of flea references, flea market, fleas in the dog.
Yeah.
I love it. Now, so there is one question that came in. I think it's worthy of some consideration, Michael. So I'll kind of play this question for you and let us know what you think. So, can a business owner be justified in saying, maybe I don't have the right messaging for that slower moving inventory? So before I sort of cut my losses, should I try different messaging for that? And I know that's something we've talked about.
Yeah, boy, what a terrific, that's a genius question. I think that, if business owners usually have, with special inventory or inventory on promotion, they usually have a target market already set up for it.
Okay.
And when that target market isn't buying, they probably will, and probably it's a good idea to try one other methodology to get the word out.
Okay.
But after that, cut your losses.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah. Maybe one shot, but like I said, they usually have a target and an understanding of how they're going to sell that. when I was in retail and I made a special buy, I knew exactly how I was going to sell it. And if it didn't sell, boom, I was out of it. I blew it right out. Or, sold it to sell, all that. So I think once again, maybe you give it one shot if you think you misjudged the marketplace. But other than that, if that doesn't work, forget it. Move on.
Very helpful.
The faster you move on, the better. That's
very helpful, Michael. Yeah, very helpful.
So the next area that you need to look at is slow paying clients or customers. Lots of my clients continue to do business with customers who are slow paying or who don't pay at all. Sometimes they do it because they know the customer personally. Do it because the customer's been with them for 100 years, for a long time. And sometimes they do it because business is bad and they just need to keep people busy and working, and they'll do anything to get business. So they'll work with somebody who's slow, they know is slow paying. But whatever the reason, it's bad practice to do business with customers who are slow paying or not paying at all. And I got many examples, but here's one example that I thought was the most important and more relevant to what I'm talking about. So I once had a client who did business with many of his longtime customers who always paid slowly. Now, when I first went to the client's office, they had $150,000 in over 90-day receivables from these slow-paying customers.
Wow.
Yeah, because their total receivable balance was $250,000. So 60% of their accounts receivable was over 90 days to these types of customers who they had for a long time. Some were friends. And these customers were even slower to pay than previous history because the economy was weakening, which is one of the risks that you run when you let receivables carry out. All right. You run into a bad economic downturn and then no one can pay.
Yeah.
But since they were longtime customers, this client took no action at all. So times were tough, bad economy and all. And these customers knew by blowing off my client's bill, nothing would happen. That's the other risk. Because believe me, every business owner knows who they can push the envelope with. Every business owner knows that if they don't pay someone, it won't matter because they're not going to get harassed about it. Everyone knows who those vendors are. As a matter of fact, Chucky, not to criticize the legal profession, but a lot of people delay in paying legal bills.
Exactly.
I mean, it's one of the bills they could get away with because they establish a relationship with the attorney.
Yeah.
And the attorney doesn't, want to push the envelope until it gets real bad, Yeah. And so legal bills is one of the things that gets delayed. And like I said, business owners understand who they could push the envelope with. So what I did is in that situation, is I immediately put all these customers in collection and we refused to do business with them in the future. And some of these customers still came back to us and started paying COD. Overall collections dramatically improved with these customers. There's no rule of thumb to determine when a customer is slow paying. It's different for every business.
Correct.
I mean, some people know that, this particular customer pays in 40 days, but he pays in 40 like clockwork, even though your terms are 30. That's okay. That's okay. We can, we generally there should be flexibility there if they can be counted on. But once it starts to get a little older, that's when there has to be some pressure applied.
Okay.
And like I said, it's different for every business, and the business owner needs to determine in a policy how many days past due is considered to be a slow paying customer.
Remarkable. Now, Michael, again, you struck another nerve with that. So a couple of questions. I'll sort of consolidate this into one overarching question. Do you have any best practice ideas on the front end of a customer or client relationship, setting those expectations about payment terms? Any
Yes,
advice on that?
Absolutely, I do. And that's what I was going to go into exactly. Establishing a system of collecting accounts receivable so that your receivable strategy is consistent, it's communicated, it's
Yes.
timely to critical, successful collections. And I want to give you an example. I want to propose, if you will,
Okay.
an accounts receivable collection strategy. So assume an invoice with terms of 30 days. So let's just assume that the terms that you have with your customers on your invoice is 30 days. And by the way, on every invoice, there should be a 1.5% interest rate or 18% a year interest when past due. Always put that on there. But between the 35th and 40th day, depending upon who the customer is, unless you really know that they pay within that period of time, you contact the customer for payment. And so if the customer doesn't return your call or you weren't satisfied with the customer's answer, I then send them a 10-day demand letter. Now, this is a letter that requires payment within 10 days or the account gets put into collection. And you send that letter certified mail so it gets attention. Now, it's certainly better if the letter comes from an attorney, but I've had a lot of success in using a form letter that I put together.
Okay.
So I didn't have to pay the legal fees. And if anyone would like to get a copy of this letter, if you can go to nextstepcfo.net, that's www.nextstepcfo.net, go to our contact page and send me a note, and I'll send it to you.
Complimentary, Michael?
Complimentary.
Nice.
And so if the account doesn't pay within the 11th to 15th day of sending that letter, then put the account in collection. Now, if you know the customer, you might give them a second chance or a third chance, whatever you want to do in terms of the initial phone call. But when they don't return your call or they ignore you, you have to take action. I mean, you just have to. And I always use a collection agency that has a legal staff. So if the account is not collected using the traditional collection methods, legal action can be taken right away with that same staff that did the original collection and is familiar with the case. And I only do business with collection agencies that take no more than 1/3 fee and have a legal staff. Once the account goes to collection, then you're out of it. Let the collection agency do its work. And once again, the key to the collection process is consistency and timeliness. And so let me just end this one segment with the best collection policy of all time.
Okay.
All right.
Pretty ambitious statement there, Michael.
That's right. And here it is. In God we trust. Everyone else pays cash up front.
There you go.
There's the best one ever. Right there. That'll work every time.
Well said.
So the next component that you have to look at is your selling prices. Now, here's a rule of thumb that you should live by. You should get complaints about your selling prices 1/3 of the time. So 33% of the time, your customers should complain about your prices. Otherwise, your prices are too low. And I asked the client who hired me one time, he was losing money. And I asked him if he got any customer complaints about his prices being too high. He was so proud of this statement that he made that he proudly said, "I never get complaints about high prices." And I immediately told him that's one of the reasons why he was losing money, because prices are too low. You need to get negative feedback on your prices right around 1/3 of the time, or maybe say 20 to 33% of the time. If you're not, your prices are too low. And so this particular client, took heed of that advice and increased his prices. And then he started to get complaints, which, obviously bothered him. But at the same time, he only got about 25 or 30% complaints, which is right in the wheelhouse of being priced correctly. So that's just a rule of thumb that you can use. And when you don't get at least 1/3 of your customers complaining, then your prices are simply too low. And when assessing your pricing and competitive pricing, you can always use your customers as the barometer. That 1/3 rule of thumb really works. Now, one problem I see with business owners is when they're doing the selling. When business owners are actually doing the selling, they have a tendency to discount prices. Because why? Well, the buck stops with them. It's their business. They can give discounts and credits. But if you have a tendency to do that, it's best to let an employee close the sale. Because one time I had a business owner, client of mine, where customers always used to go to that business owner for the final price, and he would discount it, and it was crazy. And anytime these customers were working with somebody else, they got the salesperson down to a certain price and then said, "I'd like to speak to the owner," and then he reduced it even more.
Wow.
And you should be reviewing your selling prices every 6 months. And business owners, if that's what you do, you got to stay out of the selling process. And one thing that we do for business owners, Chucky, who want to increase prices or don't want to increase prices, is we show them how many customers they could lose and have the same profit that they were enjoying before the price increase. So this is really interesting, because I had a client just the other day where he was hesitant to have a price increase. And I did the analysis for him. I showed it to him online. And I showed them that if he lost 15% of his customers, which in his case was 50 customers, he would have the same profit that he had before the price increase. So he could lose 50 customers and make the same amount of money. When I showed him this, he emphatically said, "There's no way I'm going to lose 50 customers." And so we implemented the price increase. So it actually gave him confidence to implement the price increase, because that's one of the things that business owners just are afraid. They're afraid to increase prices because they feel they're going to lose too many customers. Well, we can perform an analysis for them to show them how many customers they can safely lose and maintain the same profit before the price increase. And by the way, they lose those customers, they'll pick up others at the new pricing.
Exactly. It's remarkable and intriguing, Michael. It's funny. So in a number of business roundtable discussions, like you've mentioned this, and the light bulbs that go on, I mean, folks are just completely inspired by this. Give us a sense, right, as part of this analysis, what are some of the mechanics? Can we take just a minute to walk through kind of the steps that you take to do that analysis?
Yeah. So I have a Excel spreadsheet that will take your existing profit margins on your on the particular product that you're going to increase prices on, or products. They have the business owner's information relative to sales, relative to gross profit margin, and also it incorporates a factor for if their cost of goods sold goes up, if the cost of their suppliers goes up. So we take in all that information and the output from it, and then of course the price increase. In this particular case with this client, it was 15%.
Okay.
We take the price increase, and we can tell the output from the spreadsheet is that this client can lose X% or X customers, and still maintain the same profit they had before the price increase.
You use the word confidence in describing how business owners really digest this exercise, and I think that's spot on, right? It goes back to a number of episodes, Michael, that we've talked about where it's about decision making, right? Having the confidence to make the right decisions. But yeah, really, really intriguing. And I imagine business owners could reach out to you to maybe talk through that kind of a consultation?
Absolutely. If they just go to our website, nextstepcfo.net, and go to the contact page, be happy to help them on that.
Great.
But before I get off increasing selling prices, I do want to talk about adding more value to a product or service. So another way the business owner can get more confident in increasing prices, because it's about confidence with what I've seen. If I mention just point blank or out of the blue, I think you should have a price increase, business owners, really like stiffen up and get real nervous about it.
Oh yeah.
Because they're just worried about losing customers. But another way the business owner could get more confident in increasing prices is to find low-cost ways to add more value to the product or service. Many times when I suggest that to business owners to have a price increase and by adding more value, they magically come up with ways to enhance the product's value at a low cost. Whether it's upgrading the packaging or adding more units to a package or adding a free report if it's a service. They come up with these ideas on how you can add more value to the existing product. And the more value you add, the more propensity the customer has to buy. And it's a great separator where you would be adding more value and your competition isn't.
Yes, that's a really good nugget of wisdom. So we got a question in, actually a couple of questions, but I'll consolidate. Do you have an example, Michael, of an add value strategy?
I do, and it's a real strange one.
Okay.
But I did it.
Okay.
Now this is just one example. I'll give another example because this one's off the wall. Okay. So when I was in the ski business, I gave away a free scratch lottery ticket with every purchase of $25 or more. Come into the store, spend at least $25, and possibly become a millionaire.
It's a good
line.
Great.
It was great. I know, it's great. So, and by the way, we gave it away a scratch ticket for every $25 incremental. So if they spent $100, they got 4 scratch tickets. So
nice.
Yeah, and it was low cost to us, and it was a way to get people in the door. But another way to add value is when I was in the frozen cookie dough business, the problem the customer had is they didn't want to waste valuable oven space baking cookies. Now the key is to understand the long-term value of your customer, and I did, and so I was able to give them a $200 convection oven with the purchase of with any opening order. And I took the risk that they were going to stop ordering after the first order, but I knew the product was good. I was confident in the product. I understood the long-term value of a customer because the mathematics there, the economics of the long-term value of a customer told me my average, once I had a customer, I would generate $5,000 in sales over a period of a year. That was on average. So I knew that if I gave away a $200 convection oven and I got a $5,000, I knew I was going to make on average a $5,000 sale. And so I did it. And I solved their problem because a pizza parlor doesn't want to put cookies into the main oven. They want to put pizza in the main oven.
Exactly.
So that's just another example. But the scratch ticket was a real interesting one. It was productive.
Love that.
So the next area that you need to look at for cash flow is gross profit margins being too low.
Okay.
So we're going to talk about what is a gross profit margin. So you got to look at your gross profit margins to see how they compare to industry averages. And if you need that help, once again, we could provide help with industry averages. You have to also understand your overhead base. But gross profit margin is sales less cost of goods sold. Now, if you get 20 accounting types, I don't care if they're CPAs or if they're CFOs or even bookkeeper, whatever it is, doesn't matter. They're just 20 accounting types in a room. They will fight, scrape, and argue what goes in cost of goods sold. But what I'm going to do today is just give you a basic overview of what goes into cost of goods sold.
Okay.
So the cost of goods sold are your direct materials. So if you're producing something, or if you're in the trades, your material costs. Direct labor. This is the labor associated with building the product, whether it is a manufacturer or whether it is a distributor putting product into a packaging, or it was someone in the trades. Direct labor is in your cost of goods sold. Any subcontracted costs, so any cost associated with putting that product together or delivering that product, is all included in cost of goods sold. Freight costs and other direct costs specifically associated with the production or delivery of that product or service that you provide. That's your cost of goods. And the sales less cost of goods sold is called gross profit margin.
Okay.
And you take the gross profit margin divided by the sales, and you have your gross profit percent. And when that is too low, and it depends upon your industry, what is too low, that's why I can't make a blanket statement here today. Cash flow problems will ensue. So in addition to increasing your selling prices, the aforementioned direct costs need to be constantly reviewed and negotiated with suppliers. This is something business owners very rarely do. They feel beholden to their suppliers to the point where they don't think there's any negotiation room, and they're wrong. Because just like the business owners' customers will come to them for price breaks, the business owners of these various suppliers, they understand that you're going to come back and look for a price break.
That's such an astute point, Michael. So insightful. Yes, I mean, just like you get pressure from clients and customers, you should also put some of that same pressure on suppliers and vendors. It seems like that's your big takeaway, correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
And so the other critical element to pricing is to know what your product or service costs. And I had many clients not understand what their product or service cost. And it turned out that I had clients, when I started with them, they were selling their product for below cost. And you can just imagine the cash flow problems that was causing. I mean, you just got to know what your product or service costs in order to profitably price your product. And if you find that your product or service costs too much and you can't be competitive in the market, then it's time to examine those components of the product or service cost, of your cost of goods sold, to see what can be done to reduce it. And so let me explain this a little bit more. So we have a profit formula that we use called the 5-5-5 profit formula. Let me explain the simplicity of this formula and the impact it could have on profit and cash flow. The objective of the 5-5-5 profit formula is to increase sales 5%, decrease cost of goods sold 5%, and decrease overhead 5%. That's it. That's the formula. Once again, increase sales 5%, decrease cost of goods sold 5%, and decrease overhead 5%. My clients are shocked at how this small incremental change in just 3 areas can have a profound and compound effect on profit and cash flow. And let me give you an example. So a company that's doing $1 million in sales at a 40% gross profit margin, that's gross profit divided by sales, as I talked about earlier, and a 20% net profit margin on the very bottom line, by increasing sales 5%, reducing cost of goods sold 5%, and reducing overhead 5%, they will increase their bottom line 45%. And I have some clients that are bonusing their management team on that one formula.
Wow.
And we have strategies at Next Step CFO to impact all 3 of those areas. And in a future show, we'll cover in more detail the 5-5-5 profit formula.
Yeah. I mean, Michael, you're already getting some plaudits on that. So folks are really anticipating that episode where we break the 5-5-5 down.
Yeah, and it's amazing how small incremental changes in those 3 areas can have such a compound effect on profit.
Yeah, by the way,
yes, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Michael, just you got a quick compliment that I just really want to make sure we pronounce here on air. So you connecting that to the management performance system, right? So it seems like what you were saying was there's a client or two that you have where they've taken the 5-5-5 framework and they've used that as a way to measure the performance of managers.
Right.
Wow.
Because it has such a compound effect.
Exactly.
Even if the managers are unsuccessful, let's say, and do 4-4-4, it's still a home run, or 3-4-3. I mean, it's still a home run.
It's a really good
point. And they're focused on the right things, Chucky.
Yes.
They're focused on the right thing.
It's a good point. Really, really good point.
So the final area is paying bills too quickly. So business owners have a tendency, because they like to get their bills paid, that they don't have to have any bills hanging around. And so you got to pay your bills when they're due, not before. Otherwise, you got to let the cash inflows catch up with the outflows. By paying bills too quickly, you may be losing an opportunity to be able to pay an important bill that comes up unexpectedly. I had a client who was paying bills so rapidly that one month he couldn't pay for an unexpected payroll tax that surprised him. It has an impact on cash flow when you pay bills too quickly. Now, payroll tax is a must-pays, so he had to borrow money from a line of credit and incur unnecessary interest expense. So no matter how good your cash position is at any particular point in time, pay your bills when due in a systematic manner. And I know that expenses are coming, there's must pays. I get that, but just pay them when they're due. And every day your bookkeeper should give you a reconciled bank balance. With online banking today, that could be done very easily. They can also reconcile the bank account daily, which eliminates surprises. I have had so many times where taxing authorities have doubled and tripled payments in error, and the business owner doesn't know it. And 3 or 4 months later, they find out about it. It's just terrible. The bookkeeper should be on that bank balance daily, and you should know what it is, because if you recall, this is one of the vital 5 numbers that every business owner should know, along with sales, gross profit percent, and net profit. You have to know your bank balance. Now, the only time you should pay bills quickly is when you get an early pay discount. That is absolutely acceptable to pay early. And by the way, that's the reason why you pay your bills on time, because some vendors offer a discount if you pay early. You want to use those dollars to pay for that. By the way, sometimes it's called anticipation when you have an opportunity to pay an invoice early, or at least get a 1% discount. You should always take your discounts.
Remarkable.
Chucky, I think we have just a little time for just some bonus content that I have.
Great.
Yeah, let me just very quickly go through that. I want to talk about employee theft or embezzlement. Because most business owners never think it can happen to them. Oh, absolutely not. It can't happen to them. Someone they trust needs money. That's the problem. Someone they trust needs money and has figured out a system for stealing and embezzling, and it happens a lot more times than you think. Did you know that 80% of all business theft is employee theft? That is an accurate statistic. And the key is implementing checks and balances and making sure one person doesn't have much responsibility. I had a client who really trusted their bookkeeper. This bookkeeper did everything. She did the entire bookkeeping job, made bank balances, made bank deposits, prepared payroll, recorded sales transaction, entered accounts payable, printed checks, prepared quotes. She had no watchdog, with no checks and balances. She just bought a new house and was having problems making payments on her mortgage, a personal problem. And it appears she overpaid for the house beyond her family's means and didn't want to go into foreclosure. And she understood that she literally controlled the company's finances, and the temptation to steal was building.
Mm.
And because the question in her mind of this basically honest person was, do I jeopardize my house and my kids' livelihood, or do I steal? She chose to steal. The owner had two dormant bank accounts, had two companies, of which one was dormant. She began writing checks, payroll checks, right out of the dormant company. No one knew it. No one had audited it. Then she got lazy and started writing checks out of the main company bank account, and the theft was discovered, but not after several $1,000s were stolen.
Yeah, that's
Sometimes,
really unfortunate.
Yeah,
really unfortunate.
It's unbelievable. Honest people can get tempted, because they may have some weak character or flaw in their character, and they rationalize it by saving their kids' lives. Have a professional person like a CFO review the books at least quarterly and implement internal controls to prevent theft and embezzlement.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but I got to send it back to you.
Absolutely. No worries. No apologies needed, Michael. I mean, you were just, in a zone of insight, to be honest. I took some really good notes here, and I would imagine a number of the business owners tuned in took some really good notes. So there's still some questions that we're getting, some things that are still streaming. As Michael noted, I mean, we could circle back. If you visit nextstepcfo.net, you could reach out directly to Michael and really get some of those questions addressed. So, Michael, the next portion of our show here is our business compliments segment, right? So, this is one of the most anticipated segments of the show. In addition to all the insights that we provide, there are 4 business owners that we will spotlight as part of today's business compliments segment. The first is Lawrence Kelly. And by the way, these folks are coast to coast, right? So Lawrence is out in the East Coast. He's the CEO and founder of usanswer.com. This is interesting. So they empower small business owners by providing a service that allows you to have almost like an answering machine on demand. Really interesting, particularly for business owners that are on the go. The next business owner that we want to spotlight is Michael Hoy. Michael's actually out in the Midwest. He helps to run Great Day Improvements. Let me say that again, Great Day Improvements. And his company was actually just ranked number 3 on Qualified Remodelers top 500 remodelers list for 2024. This is a quite prestigious recognition. So hats off to Michael and team. The third business owner that we want to spotlight, Victoria Murray. She runs Inbox Virtual Associates. And Michael, they do something really interesting, right? So they help speakers, authors, and coaches manage the kind of operational side of the business, right? So they're sort of like an online business manager agency. So really intriguing what Victoria and team are doing. And then the last, the last business owner that we want to spotlight, Michael, Alex Zinni. Alex is out in the Midwest, runs Alpha Key Digital. It's a digital marketing company. What we're particularly inspired by was they actually help business owners define their target audience and then focus on that target audience with authentic conversations. Michael, this is something that you and I talk about quite often. How do you sort of build this authentic relationship with clients and customers? So all these business owners, in particular, to just the point of reference here is they also provided some really good insight on our book interview. Again, our book, Powerful Business Strategies. So hats off to these business owners. Michael, I want to toss it back over to you.
Thank you, Chucky.
Comments. Yep.
Yeah. If you'd like to participate in a book interview, you could go to our website, www.nextstepcfo.net, go to our contact page, and put in book interview and send me a message. Be happy to interview you. And I promise you this, you will learn business and financial strategies that your competition isn't doing.
Brilliant.
And to get a copy of the book, Powerful Business Strategies, simply go to our website, www.nextstepcfo.net. It is totally complimentary. And until next Monday at noon Eastern Time, for Chucky Obia, I'm Michael Barbarita. And remember, don't keep doing what your competition is doing.
Thank you.
You have been listening to Powerful Business Strategies, finding out that everything you ever learned about growing your business is wrong. Tune in next week and every week at noon Eastern Time on W4CY Radio with your host, Michael Barbarita of Next Step CFO and moderator Chucky Obio.